Welcome to the Canadian Expat, where we continue on our journey speaking with Canadians and Canadian organizations abroad so that we might gain a bit of inspiration, obtain some advice, and perhaps hear a few cautionary tales. Today, we go to Los Angeles.
When the leaves burn red and the geese turn their heads.
My next guest is Kalon Hart, an amazing Canadian artist, singer-songwriter living in Los Angeles, having made the move from Toronto. With his clean, bright acoustic guitar and stripped-down piano progressions, he presents incredibly calm yet powerful vocals and a storytelling style that evokes serious introspection and raw emotion. It's been called meditative, and that's not a stretch of the imagination at all. Incredibly easy to listen to and enjoyable. Kalon Hart, welcome to the Canadian Expat.
Thank you so much. I love that introduction. You should maybe write my next bio, I think.
Kalon, I really want to speak to you about the new album, but I'd like to touch on a little bit about your history first, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Oshawa, Ontario, which is a suburb of Toronto. And then I've been a musician my whole life. And I became a professional musician after studying music in university. And first I studied classical music, and I was playing the tuba because that's kind of just what I played in band. My first instrument was actually guitar, and I did mess around a little bit with singing songs, but I didn't really have the confidence to do it at that age. So I went for the classical world, and I was freelancing in Toronto as a musician for a number of years. And I branched out from the classical world, and I started playing pop music, and I played bass lines on the tuba, and I was playing in bands. I played in a band called Lemon Bucket Orchestra for 4 years. And through all this, I was also writing music, and that got me involved in the film world, in scoring films, because I realized, the film world is a place where you can draw on an eclectic background. No one's going to judge you for being outside the box. You can bring your entire being into play. So I found that a very rewarding place for me. And after a few years of doing that, I decided to move down here to Los Angeles, which is the mecca of the film industry and the capital of the film scoring world. And it's been going well. I found some work down here, but I also found a transformational vortex of energy. And I found that I had a lot more to give the world than what I was giving, and that's what started the process of this singer-songwriter project. So that was about 2 years ago. I got a guitar again after about a 15-year hiatus, and I started playing my first instrument. And now having gone through some personal growth, I was finally ready to start singing and writing songs, and that's what happened.
Very cool. The album is amazing. I've been listening to it for the last couple of weeks and can't get enough of it. It's tremendous. What brought on this album and this collection of 7 songs?
My girlfriend, who's an actress and filmmaker, and she sat me down early in our relationship, and she sort of said, she kind of sensed that, like, she's almost a bit psychic, I think, and she was like, you're not really doing everything you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be singing. I can see you singing. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. So, shut up. Don't say it. I was like, don't tell me that I'm not who I'm supposed to be. That was a weird moment for me. But we did some visualization exercises, and she did this one where she was like, visualize yourself at your most happiest. And, that was when I realized that I missed being on stage. Since I'd moved down to LA, I wasn't playing tuba anymore, really. I was focusing on film scoring, but I missed performing, and I missed connecting to audiences. And then she also said, imagine yourself at your greatest potential, and I realized at that moment that I was singing and holding a guitar, and I had this very deep desire to be doing this. But for whatever reason, I'd always kind of veered off to the left or right and not quite gone for it 100%. And there's a really interesting book called The War of Art. I'm going to look up the author now. It's not The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but The War of Art. I think his name is Stephen Pressfield is the author, who's a famous author of epic historical fiction. But he wrote a series of sort of self-help books for creative people that are really interesting about dialing into the process of achieving professional success as an artist, and like what makes it work, and how resistance gets in your way, and how easily people have been pulled off, and how basically how to fight the war against all of the internal forces that want to stop you from doing what your heart desires, because the ego gets in the way, and the ego says, don't change, we're too comfortable now, we don't want to break apart our structures and everything. But my girlfriend she's been my muse, and she helped me to realize that I do have a desire to sing, and she told me, like, hey, write a song for me, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared, I can't. But I tried just writing silly, simple songs for her, and that was the start. And a few of those songs just kind of came out of like me just hanging out with her, on Sunday morning, and she'd go make pancakes, and I'd written "Love Is Surrender" in 20 minutes, and she was gone. And that's kind of when you see a magical kind of flow happening like that, you're onto something. And so that was the beginning, and I started writing more songs as I, kept kind of working through my own personal growth and self-development. And a lot of those songs would come quickly. I would just kind of feel like I'd get a little bolt of lightning, and I'd be like, whoa, what's that? That's a song. Okay, I gotta write that song. I gotta feel that out. And I've written a lot. I've written probably 40 to 45 or 50 songs in the last 2.5 years. So the 7 on this record were the best ones, but I've written at least 10 since the record came out. So the next record is basically already in pre-production, and I just love it. I love this work, and it just feels really great. So I love working at singing, and I love developing, and I love playing guitar again, and I'm just so excited about the whole thing.
There's a clear theme in the album, and you've touched a little bit on, of course, the title track, "Love Is Surrender." Can you tell us a little bit about that song and the theme in general throughout the album?
I wrote that song when my girlfriend was about to go on a trip, and it was not a long trip, but I just realized all of a sudden that I was getting very anxious, and I had this irrational fear that she was going to like meet someone on the trip and decide not to be with me anymore, and yada yada yada. And I was like, oh, I'm freaking out about your trip, and like I realized maybe the old me would have then tried to persuade her not to go, and like that. I realized that's not a productive act, because really what was happening is I had old fear of abandonment that went way back to childhood that was getting triggered. And I realized, like, geez, I gotta sort this out. I can't speak out of my fear of abandonment as though it's something that's like, present from the present moment. It's something deeper. And like, how do I really feel? I just is for that song, and I thought, what would that song sound like? And so the song became a song about trusting in love as something deep, surrendering into that, and trusting that other emotions that might get kicked up in the process, those are gonna blow by like weather patterns, right? And that's the chorus. Love is surrender, emotions are weather. So that's sort of a broad theme. Surrender is definitely a broad theme. It's the surrender to the growth process of life, of your spirit. It's the surrendering of control and allowing yourself to be what you're meant to be rather than what you think you need to be. And it's the sort of like methodical healing process that I've been going through that's been inspiring a lot of these songs. How do you gain emotional mastery? Emotional mastery, I think, is the key theme of this record. It's I feel something, but what does it mean? What do I actually want to be doing? I don't have to be a prisoner and automatically just react to whatever comes into my system. I can get deeper into the wiring and understand myself and understand what it is I'm feeling and what the source of that feeling is. And I can decide what actions I want to take that are in alignment with who I want to be. And the ones that aren't, I'm going to let them go. Surrender, and I'm going to just, and in the long term, I'm going to work at rewiring my system so that I have control over, the darker emotions that want to come up. If there's something in there that's got to be healed, I want to dig into that, and I want to figure it out, and I want to put the love in that heals it up, so that I'm not triggering myself constantly over day-to-day things, right? So this has just been a personal process for me as a growing human being, you know, and the songwriting just kind of was a journaling tool as I worked through this. But as I kept going, I realized, you know, that these songs that came out of this process were very authentic and vulnerable, and people were connecting to them. So that showed me, well, maybe you should be sharing these songs, because everybody can relate to personal growth and emotional mastery. It's part of being human. So that gave the project a certain focus, so that I know that the songs that I'm going to be writing are going to be based on growth and love and emotional mastery. And, you know, I don't have to be worrying about, let's write a song about clubbing and we'll try and get a good beat and sell a lot of money and get signed, and like, that's not for me. And I was able to let go of that program that comes in from the mainstream industry that says like, oh, in order to succeed, you must do it this way. You must like write songs about going to the club and all that stuff. And like, you know, the pressure is real when you feel that, like it's kind of a story that just like hangs in the air in the music business. You're like, well, how do I succeed? And there's a preordained like hologram of a story that exists that the majors are putting out, that the capitalist industry is putting out. And you can feel this pressure that like, oh, I have to do it this way, you know. And luckily, finding this sort of general message of personal growth and emotional mastery, that enabled me to insulate myself from the more like toxic messaging from the mainstream industry. So like, I don't go that way, and I don't write that kind of song. And I think that's going to keep me happy and alive for the long term.
Well, I can tell you that the album is incredibly easy to relate to. It really develops a strong connection to the listener very quickly. I know that you've been composing music for a long time through, of course, TV and film.
Yes.
But there seems to be a real musical maturity in this album that I think you would find rare in first albums. It's really tremendous, and I think you've been able to speak to that already.
Thank you.
Fact that it really comes from the heart, and you've done a tremendous job on it.
Well, and I did put out a record before, but it was an instrumental record about 4 years ago. Right? I was kind of starting to get into the idea of like, what do I have to express to myself? And, you know, I had 30 or 40 records from the various bands I was in. So like, I consider myself very fortunate. You know, I like to see the glass as half full, but I am 36 years old, which is fairly late in life to be like releasing a debut album. And, you know, in some moments I think I get the thought of like, damn it, why didn't you do this when you were 21? You would have had a Grammy by now, and now you're so old and you're too tired to go touring and yada yada. I'm like, you know, like my life has been what it was for a reason, and I've lived a lot in these 36 years, and I've experienced a lot, and I've gained a lot of musical knowledge. So that's put me in a position where I can bring some skill and some experience into the process, and hopefully accelerate the growth from zero to successful singer-songwriter. You know, I don't think it's going to take me 10 years to figure out what I'm doing. I kind of know what I'm doing now. So it's just a matter of connecting the dots, and then we'll see where it goes, and we'll see what happens.
Tremendous. Now, how long have you been in Los Angeles now?
I just had my 4-year anniversary a couple weeks ago. And I've been working for a TV composer since I got down here named Sean Callery. And he's known for 24 and Homeland, some of his more famous shows, and Jessica Jones. And I work as his assistant. And so I'm keeping the studio running. I take care of the computers, and I download the picture, and then I get to do a bit of writing on his TV shows. So that's a very interesting and challenging job, and it definitely keeps me on my toes. And you know, I've learned a lot about writing music from him, about, you know, simplicity of ideas and the confidence of a single idea, rather than I used to fill up my first cues with have 100 different ideas, and it would just be a mush. And Sean would be like, "Man, get that out of there. Just put a piano line that just cuts through the mix." And it's like, what? I'm too scared to do that, you know? So I learned a lot just by osmosis, because he really is a master, one of the masters of TV and film scoring here in LA. And I enjoy the balance. I enjoy the the variety of having film scoring and TV scoring and the tech world and the workflow and the intensity of it, and then also stepping into Kalon Hart, the artist, the singer-songwriter, the spirit realms, the emotional world, and obviously I'm at the point where I need steady income to make the singer-songwriter thing happen. So that's also an important balance. The challenge for me now is figuring out what is the right balance between the film scoring and writing music and the Kalon Hart singer-songwriter. And I definitely want to do both because I love both projects for different reasons. So I'm trying to figure out how to create the right balance of time and effort that I put into each of those pursuits.
Right. Well, all the best in those pursuits. They're amazing.
Thank you.
For some of our viewers who maybe they're still in Canada and they're thinking about perhaps making the step to Los Angeles, any advice to any of those aspiring artists?
Yes. Two things that I would say. Number one, you do need to get a visa. You can come and live here temporarily on a tourist visa, but you're not allowed to work. And you're limited to several months out of the year. But eventually your long-term plan, if you want to move, has got to be to get a visa of some kind. I got the O1, which is known as the Alien of Extraordinary Ability visa. It's a pain in the butt, I'm not going to lie, but it is achievable. You just need to have a certain level of success and certain levels of paperwork. So one thing I would recommend is that you meet now with a lawyer and have a consultation. And if you're thinking about it for a year or 2 years down the road, just sit down with the lawyer and say, this is my life. Here's my resume. Here's everything I've done. Am I a candidate for the O1? And they'll be able to tell you, you look good here, but you're a little short on publicity. Or if you can get on a jury for some nonprofit award things, that would help. And, you'll have a plan for things that you can do in the meantime to make your visa case stronger. And then by the time you're ready to move, you won't be scrambling to have articles written about you or something like that. Because there's a checklist. They don't know art is. They know does this man have awards? Check. There's things you can do to manage your checklist, so to speak. So the sooner you get on that, the better. The second thing, I would come down to LA or wherever it is you want to move and do some scouting missions and try to meet with people in your industry or next to it or close to it. And just, I came for a month and I think that was good. And other people come for a couple months or a couple weeks, but make a couple trips and scout the city. Start to get a feel for what it vibes like. And anyone send them an email and say hey, I'm thinking of coming to LA. Can I have coffee with you and can we talk about the business? And you don't want to be can I work for you? Don't be pushing yourself just yet, but just come with an open mind and be listen, I just would like to ask you from a humble place, can you share something about how the city works and how you've set yourself up? And most people, if you approach them with humility and grace, will say yes to that. I get approached about once a month from someone that wants to know, and I almost always will make time to do a phone call, or if they're in town, I'll have coffee with them, and I'm happy to do it because people did it for me. So the more of that you can do, the better. And then when you finally do arrive, you'll be able to say to these people, I'm in town, what's cooking, do you need any help on any projects? And maybe you'll be able to parlay that into a gig of some kind. And I've seen the mistake that some people make is they work themselves up into a frenzy and they say, I'm going for it. I'm going to do this. This is my dream. I'm going to move to LA. And they just load up the car and drive and arrive in LA. And they're just, well, there you are. You're in LA. Now what? You haven't done any groundwork. You don't know anybody here. Nobody knows you. What's the plan? You have to sustain yourself. And if you're on a visa as a foreigner, you're not allowed to work outside of your visa, the bounds of your visa. So you can't drive for Uber. You can't go work at McDonald's to make the ends meet. You can hopefully line up some freelance work from your Canadian contacts and do that. But start establishing a network now so that when you arrive, you are not completely isolated. And the Canadians in LA are very friendly. There's a strong expat community, and people are open to collaborating and to being friends with you. And you just have to make the inroads, and don't be shy. Anyone that you met maybe 4 or 5 years ago that you've forgotten about, just send them an email. You never know. I've reconnected with people that I hardly knew in Toronto, but now we're very close friends because we're down here in LA together. So yeah, so those are the 2 advice points I have. One is start the awareness of the visa process now. And the second one is start building your network now, so that when you arrive, you're plugging into something that's already existing and you're not just alone in the giant city, because it will chew you up, spit you out in a hurry. Unfortunately, I've seen that happen before to people that come down here without having done any of the groundwork. So, but it can work. There's a lot happening here. It's a wonderful city, and anything you want, it's here. You just got to know where to find it.
Tremendous advice. Yeah. I'm going to be putting a link to where people could listen to your album.
Yes.
Maybe purchase it if they're able to, but also maybe more information on if you have any tours coming up, let us know. We'd be more than happy to post that information as well.
Certainly. I just finished a little tour of Canada, and that was the CD release, and I had the best time ever. And I'm booking some new shows for the fall, and I'm going to be playing out here in LA a lot, but I do like to come back to Toronto every few months, so there'll be some shows around Toronto as well. And kalonhart.com, KalonHart is the website, and I thank you very much for your support.
Fantastic. And for all those watching, thank you very much. If you've enjoyed this, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and if you're interested in participating in one of these conversations, please comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.